All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. I think probably Tony is the one guy watching live. This is Armchair Updates. I have the owner of the ABL Astros. I've got Ray. Ray, thanks for taking the time to be on the pod. How you doing?
You got it. I'm doing good. I'm glad to finally be on here.
Yeah, man. I wanted to make an effort. I know I said early on I want to get everybody on here like before the end of the first season. Wasn't wasn't going to happen. Just didn't work out that way. But I'm glad to start getting guys on now that both want to be and haven't been on yet. Um, so I want to ask you first off: is ABL your only dynasty league? Do you do a lot of dynasty?
Far from it. It's not even my only 30-team league. I don't know what that means to me,
Okay.
but I have another 30-team league out there too.
So you weren't coming into this like super fresh. Like some of the guys, it was our first dynasty. Some guys, it was their first auction ever. A lot of us, it was our first 30-teamer. But you're pretty well seasoned then, eh?
A 30-team auction is just freaking nuts. So I think for that there's maybe a little bit of a learning curve. But as far as dynasty, I have a 20-teamer and I have maybe like 5 or 6 15-teamers.
All right, cool. Do you are these on tracks as well?
Some are on CBS and tracks.
Okay. What do you like tracks? Just like open and honest. Do you like tracks?
I do.
Yeah.
The the draft room is annoying because it opens in mobile. Like the mobile, like the app or whatever you want to call it is better. But now that they keep on raising their price, I'd rather pay the extra few bucks for CBS. I mean, honestly, the only thing is CBS. In a bunch of my deeper leagues, we have unlisted players because the universe
Okay.
doesn't have them. Trax has them. But other
I
than
guess that's
that, they're all like all those leagues are long-standing leagues, good commissioners, whatever. So like it's not the end of the world. You add them in as an unlisted player or whatever. So now that Fantrax keeps raising their prices, honestly, I'd rather pay the extra few bucks for CBS and get the better app.
yeah. I've never used CBS, but I hear a lot about it because those are my preferred podcast, like fantasy podcast guys. So
Yeah.
they're pimping their stuff all the time. I've never actually used it, but I mean it sounds great, especially from a dynasty side. All of the commish tools and everything that you're able to use. I know Trax is pretty deep with that as well, but I just personally have a distaste for Trax generally. But
No,
I
I
mean
get it. I
yeah,
have enough
it's
leagues
not.
on there, so it's one of those things. I'm on Yahoo, I'm on CBS, I'm on ESPN, I'm on NFBC, so I have enough.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Pretty much touching all the I know you said earlier you're not on RT.
that's
Is it
probably the only
because
one that I'm not.
is there a reason for that? Do you not like the platform or
I like the platform. I'm just trying. I'm on so many other ones that I'm trying to at least stay where
right?
I'm off of one.
Keep the roots where they are instead of branching out even further.
Exactly.
I mean, I like RT a lot, but they do have I'm pretty sure from what I've seen and played the highest rake of any of the platforms. I haven't played NFBC, but I imagine it's worse than NFBC as well, just from a lot of what I've seen. I think their standard leagues, especially the lower buy-in ones, they're very rake heavy. It like rakes the buy-in of an entire team of the league basically at the end of it.
I
So
think that's pretty similar
uh,
to NFBC.
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
But you're
the
also getting a much better platform on NFBC. Like NFBC, you get all of their rankings and they give you their own ADP and everything. RT does not really do that. So
yeah, that
uh,
ADP is huge.
not that that's part of the rake price, but still it is a better RT is very rudimentary and basic. It feels like it kind of got stuck behind in like the early 2000s or something, and they just never bothered to advance. But I've been there a while. I like them. Back to actual ABL stuff. So as we know, you are the Astros.
Yeah.
Were you the Astros finished 20-36 on the year? Not a great year like record wise, but the Astros did show up on the slim loss list at least, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at least 7 times the Astros were on a tough loss list. So did you, throughout the year, was that something that you noticed at all? Like there was a stretch there where you took a tough loss week 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 all in a row. The Astros were, I think, for 4 of those 5 weeks, the Astros were the second thinnest loss margin of those weeks. Did you feel that throughout the year?
100%. It hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously going into this, I was trying to compete year one because I do that in all my leagues. I've been patient and I obviously want to win. So I was going into it to win. That was my plan. That was my draft strategy. I mean, the prices that some of the prospects went for in the initial auction were freaking crazy, in my opinion, to begin with. So if I had any doubt, it pushed me that way anyway. But the way I looked at it is, hey, I'm going to try to win. And if I can, I'm going to recognize it early and pivot, which is ultimately what I did. But I mean, I know, not to sound like sour grapes with the divisions and the matchups and all that shit, but I mean, I know I got screwed. But I mean, based on that, based on my point total, based on all that stuff, I get it. And then that ultimately influenced my record the second half of the year. Because then I started selling when instead I would have either held or been a buyer. Right. Because, figure right off the bat, 20 wins. If I take half of those, even, 5 or 6 out of those that you mentioned, I'm at 25, 26. Plus then the second half of the year when I was selling and maybe winning 1 game a week if I was lucky. It's a totally different story. But at that point, I knew mathematically that I didn't have a chance.
Right.
So I figured, hey, I might as well get some assets for it.
Well, I don't want to get into it just yet, but as I've said before, I love some of the moves you've made coming into the offseason and getting ready to start year 2, because I think it's still pretty clear that you took I'm going for it in year 1. Maybe came up a little bit short, but if anybody sits and looks at the moves that you've made in the offseason, you're clearly gearing up to also go for it in year 2. But sticking with year 1, so if we took 6 of those 7, say, that you showed up on the slim margin list, and we give you, instead of a 20 and 36 record, we give you a 26 and 30 record, you're pretty much right there, maybe a game or 2 off, I can't remember exactly, from the Yankees for that last spot in the AL, for that last wild card spot. Do you think, and that's kind of a hard question to answer, like, would you have made any moves differently?
I definitely wouldn't have sold half of what I sold, honestly.
Right, yeah. I guess that seems kind of silly. Like
I was selling off Fab. So at that point, I was picking up draft picks because I didn't need the Fab. So I was out of Fab. I had half a starting roster at that point.
Yeah.
So, I would have done a lot of stuff differently. Even if I didn't become a buyer, I wouldn't have sold as hard.
Sure.
Trading LeMahieu and Rizzo for Franmil Reyes and Jeremy Pena when I didn't need LeMahieu or Rizzo, that's a no-brainer. But, he's no longer in the league to speak for that.
What Jeremy Pena turns into down the line,
exactly,
makes that deal look really, really nice in retrospect, because you turn Jeremy Pena into Brandon. Is Brandon the Lau or is Brandon the Low? It's Nate Lowe, Brandon Lau, right?
Oh, is it Lau?
Or Brandon Lowe, Nate Lau, one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's Lowe and Lau. Yeah,
you turned Jeremy Pena into. He could be some people's number 1 second baseman, maybe going into next year, but a top 5 second baseman easy. And I was just looking today, he's also got left field eligibility. So I quite like that move that Pena ended up turning into. So I guess you can see it as like I would have did things differently, but you didn't get to, and that move at least turned into what should be a pretty nice asset going forward.
Yeah, like that trade, whatever, maybe again, I probably don't do that trade, but like some of the other trades I did, it was like, okay, fine, like I'm just going to get assets. Like if you look at the back end of my roster, like all the Fab that I was using, once I figured out like, hey, I'm not going to really compete because of those tough losses, I was just grabbing all these minor leaguers that I'm like, hey, this guy looks good. This guy's popping a little bit. Let me grab him. I figured I'm just going to accumulate as many draft picks, as many minor leaguers as I can, have the assets, and kind of go from there. I mean, ultimately, I thinned out a bunch, but even somebody like Pena, he has value to me as a top prospect, or he has value to me with somebody like a Brandon Lowe at what I think is a good price. And I mean, I still have probably a few more prospects to trim once it opens back up again. But I mean, I've trimmed a lot since.
Do you think you have some? Because you're sitting at $205 right now of salary,
Yes.
and by my math, you've got $40 worth of inflation coming. So you got 20 players, right? You got $40 coming in inflation, takes you up to 245. You could your team right now is pretty strong. You don't have a ton of like starting spots to fill. You're going to be a player for a third baseman unless maybe you make a deal or something. I'm in that market as well, and if you look at the third baseman out there right now, it seems like one of the deeper positions, at least for our league, like going into the auction. Third base looks reasonably deep compared to everything else.
Yeah.
Are you pretty well set? I mean, maybe you cut some relievers or something, but are you pretty well set going into the auction, you think?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm going to cut some relievers or look to trade, and I'm back and forth on Greinke because Greinke's at $20 with the inflation. To me, that's kind of the hanging chad of what do I want to do with that $20?
Are you an Astros fan in like real life?
Yeah.
Are you a Greinke fan in real life?
Not really.
Not really.
I feel like every single game is just frustrating to watch him pitch. Like, I recognize that he's a borderline Hall of Famer. He's had a hell of a career. He's done well, even if he kind of goes under the radar a bit. But he doesn't strike guys out, so fantasy, it's obviously not as good. And it's just, he always seems to give up a few runs because on base. It's frustrating to watch. But I mean, again, at the time, the deal came up, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to keep JD Davis, and I have to trim minor leaguers. So why don't I get a reasonably priced starting pitcher and kind of see what happens?
Even for $20, he was a 13 point per game average. He did make 29 starts. That carries. I mean, I guess the question is, do you think he's going to make another 30 starts? At 39 years old with, I mean, what is he down to now? 80, 87, 88 mile an hour fastball.
Exactly.
The ERA was up to 4.16. He hasn't exactly been aging like Wainwright, for example. He just and Greinke was never a guy that he threw hard for a lot of his career, but he was never a guy that relied on velocity. But dropping down as much as he has is going to be tough if you don't really keep the secondaries going. He doesn't have that Waino curveball or anything to fall back on. I don't know where that's a tough call for you, I think.
I mean, again, it's going to be one of those things
right there,
where I try to trade him, see what I can get. I mean, the way I look at it is I have DeSclafani, Marquez, Musgrove, Matz. So I have 4.
It's a nice staff. I mean, in a 30-team league and in the ABL, the way it's set up, that's a really nice looking staff.
So I have 4. Figure I'm going to cut a few of these relievers. So I'm losing that inflation. And then again, depending on what I do with Greinke, I mean, if I make a trade for a third baseman, depending on what I give up, that could also influence what I do with Greinke. So
that's tough. That is tough. Thankfully, you got still a little bit of time to figure it out. Because man, if I'm you, I really don't know. I don't know what I'm. Because he's just, that price is just right there in that questionable range. It's like, well, could I? Maybe I could try to cut him and get him cheaper in the auction if you wanted to get him back, or just any pitcher that you think is going to make 30 starts for that matter. Like, what are these guys going to go for? You've probably seen Jeff's stuff that he posted about the dearth of pitching that's going to be probably available in the auction. I think he scared the hell out of a lot of teams.
And inflation's going to be out of control.
Yeah.
So then the other angle is, hey, maybe I kind of throw him back and sit out the crazy bidding war because I have my 4 that I like, and see if I could spread that $20 around 2 or 3 guys.
Sure.
And if one of them pops, and if not, I can actually cut them because I don't have a contract.
Right. Yeah, I don't envy that decision. I thought I had a tough one with Strasburg, but at $31, I cut him just because I can't. The injury risk is just too great. But Greinke has been, if not spectacular, at least pretty healthy. And even at 38, just made 29 starts. So when's the last time Strass made 29 starts?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if he ever has, but it's been a while. I feel like for $31, maybe I get him back cheaper. But then I cut him and started listening to Jeff, and I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to get him back for cheaper than $31. There might be a team desperate enough that says, man, I really need a pitcher, and I have the money. And I could see maybe Sam or somebody that just has too much money to spend and roster spots to fill and looks and sees that there's not a lot of pitching out there. Yeah, I don't know what I think Greinke would go for. I think I could easily see him going for more than 20 if he came up in the auction at the right time. It's also kind of about that too. Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, 30-team league, all it takes is one. All it takes is one owner that has some money to spend. Yeah. You're gonna have inflation. You're gonna have somebody that's gonna be like, okay, fine. Like, had I not made half of those trades that I made, it's like, oh, I have DeSclafani for 4, and I have Matz for $1. I'm saving all this money on them, so I'm gonna go spend it somewhere.
DeSclafani for 4 was such a. If he kind of maybe like in real life, if he was on a playoff team in the ABL, DeSclafani for $4 would have been talked about a lot more. That was one of the, we talked a lot about Willie Peralta for $1, and I think Joe had $8 Robbie Ray. Yeah, great. But DeSclafani for $4 and getting 450 points out of him, 14.5 a game, really phenomenal value. And Joe Musgrove at 17, another 500 points at well below. And when you look at the DeGroms and such that aren't giving you 32 starts, aren't giving you 14, 15 points a game, 15.5 for Musgrove, you have some really tremendous value on your staff there. Even the 370 for Matz out of $1. I mean, yeah, it's no Willie Peralta, but that's a really nice, and you were able to pick up the moderately expensive Marquez for at 28 after inflation, but you won't find anybody that really would probably turn that away. If the guy could just get out of Coors, it's probably never going to happen because the Rockies just refuse to make the right move at any point. But
yeah, why would that?
Still another 14-point a game pitcher. I mean, your staff is looking really loaded, assuming these guys stay healthy.
Of course.
No reason to expect a big slide out of any of them, I wouldn't think. And man, even some of these relievers that you got some 300-point relievers on that team as well. And of course, Quinn Priester. I want to talk about Priester. Let's get into the moves. Start from the beginning, or at least how I wrote them down, which I think is how they stacked up. The first thing you do this year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first thing you do is add Carlos Correa.
Yes.
Now, was he – did you ever – well, you were selling, so you probably didn't attempt to get him during the second half of the season. I mean, that's probably a silly question. But was he somebody that you had an idea that you wanted to try to get?
I had inquired about him just to kind of see because, again, even while I was selling, to me, I was like, okay, Correa has some value to me next year. Because he went for 31. I think he's going to go for probably 40 or 50 this year. Because you're going to have inflation, you're going to have – and I think the other thing, too, is that if you look at last year's auction, all those prospects that went for enormous amounts of money, we're not auctioning prospects off this year. So all that money that went to the prospects last year is going to go to major league players this year. So I think that part of the draft is kind of what allowed me to get Musgrove for 17, DeSclafani for 4, Matz for 1, because everyone was throwing all this money at these prospects. This year, that's not going to happen. It's just major leaguers. So I think that's another factor of the auction looking a lot different this year. So I said, you know what, Correa, because I don't want to end up in a bidding war at the auction. So I figure, all right, Correa, 31. I was interested in him during the season. Obviously, didn't work out. But then again, during the season, I was acquiring all these draft picks because I was selling Fab. Because at that point, I had collected enough dollar relievers and enough prospects that I kind of liked with upside. So I was like, okay, at that point, let me sell this Fab, get what I can get for it. And then I'm like, okay, I have all these draft picks that I want to use, all these minor leaguers that I like at some level. What the hell am I going to do? So I was like, okay, a second and a third rounder for Correa. Why the hell not?
And you got him for what, like 2 picks, right? Like, yeah,
A second and a
a
third
great,
rounder.
yeah,
Because again, the way I
if you
looked at
can.
it.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, the way I kind of looked at it is, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to skip ahead. I think I ended back with a pick in every round, which is ultimately,
Yeah,
and
you
maybe
did.
I have one extra one, but I mean, ultimately, that's what you start with anyway. So to me, that's fine. So I was like, okay,
Yeah,
if I
that's
can
that's
kind
the
of get,
beauty of all these picks you made. You made a lot of great trades that really improved your team, and then I get kind of the bottom of your team and look, and you still have a pick in every single round this year. You still have a first. You actually have the first right before mine. You have 122. I have the Cardinals 123. So you actually go right before me. But yeah, you didn't. You have I think only 2 picks next year. One of those. I think your second rounder is mine next year. 23. But yeah, I mean, you made a lot of great deals and didn't sacrifice all that much. I don't feel like.
again, like the way, I mean, again, having Ray sitting there for 13 helped when I made that deal. And because at this point, I hadn't made any of the other deals that we'll go through. And having
Right.
Josh Naylor for $1 also helped. And again, I was able to trade Jake Eater, who I picked up after he popped this year. Traded him for Naylor. Unfortunately, Eater had Tommy John after I traded him. But again, the way I look at it, like, hey, that was a good use of a Fab dollar.
Oh, that's how you got Eater?
Yeah, I got Eater on Fab for $1.
Oh, wow. Very
And then I
nice.
traded
Yeah,
him
because
for
he was really
Naylor.
shooting up some rankings and such. Like he
Yeah.
was becoming a darling, and now he's on actually my team. I got him from the Nats very recently, so I'm taking the risk on the TJ, and I'll sit on him for the 18 months or whatever, and see if he comes back and looks good. But
Yeah, no, I like
I
him
did
a
not
lot.
realize that he was a Fab guy for you. That's very nice.
Yeah.
And then, so you then jettisoned some money. You brought in some money with Correa. No, that's the third deal you made. You actually acquired Hunter Bishop, nice prospect, for a couple prospects of your own, Cameron Meissner, Matt Brash. Brash, who has got some run on social media towards the end of the year, because a lot of clips were coming out with him throwing his slider, and it really looked like a really devastating Kerry Wood kind of slider, but probably has reliever,
Yes.
in his future. Meissner, I don't know a ton about, but Hunter Bishop on the return. If you're a prospect guy, Hunter Bishop is a righty's a Giants, one of the upper level Giant bats, and you didn't hang on to him for very long, but you did use him as a piece to get a prospect I personally like more, and we'll get to that. But was acquiring Bishop for you? Was it part of a plan to eventually deal him later, or was he somebody you liked and the opportunity to deal him later just kind of came along?
He was somebody that I acquired more with the intention to deal.
Okay.
Because for me, Brash was another dollar Fab guy this year.
Nice.
And I had the reliever concern about him a little bit. And again, I had so many of these guys that I needed to consolidate. Misner has kind of been whatever, and I think Miami has some other young outfielders that have moved past him. So I figured, hey, I'll do a 2-for-1. Again, help my roster jam and get a name prospect that a lot of people still like a lot. And that if Bishop was stuck on my team, not the worst thing in the world.
We'll jump ahead to when you actually deal Bishop because nothing. I mean, it doesn't really affect the deals in between. So you acquire Hunter Bishop. Not long after, you deal Hunter Bishop and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa for Quinn Priester, who, if you watch this and you're not a big prospect guy, look at the helium that Quinn Priester has gotten in the last year or so. He looks like the real deal. I guess the only scary thing is he's a Pirate prospect, and their track record, especially with pitchers, is not the best. It's probably actually one of the worst. But maybe that regime, I mean, I think it's probably mostly changed already since like the guys that gave Glasnow away and the guys that couldn't, develop any of these Pirate starters. But you still have to be excited for the potential, regardless what team he's on.
Second half of last year, he was nuts. 100%.
21 years old. Yeah, great looking arm. Now, is he? You're in dynasty leagues. You know this stuff. Is Priester a guy that you've been high on for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had drafted him in one or two first year player drafts when he came out. So I've liked him. His stock has kind of dropped a bit, but he's still young, still has the talent, so I've held on to him. I mean, as a high school right-hander, those guys take a little longer anyway.
Sure. So realistically, you turned a couple of prospects that you were kind of meh on to one eventually that you really like, and really all it cost you was Kiner-Falefa, who I don't remember what his salary was.
He was cheap. I think he would have been 10 with inflation.
Okay.
But once I got Correa and Kiner-Falefa lost third base eligibility, I didn't really have a spot for him.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you play Yahoo. He still had catcher availability in Yahoo this year. Yeah, he was a stud in like all these other formats where he had all this funky eligibility. But yeah, once he starts losing that, he's just kind of I don't know. He's good. He's a solid major leaguer. The glove alone is going to keep him in the lineup every day. So
exactly, and I mean, again, he steals, but I mean, in a points league, I really can care less if somebody steals. I mean, obviously, I want the points, but it's not a commodity. I like Correa a lot better. So if Kiner-Falefa had third base eligibility, I wouldn't have made. I don't know if I make the deal. Giving up him and Bishop.
Yeah. Man, yeah, that's tough.
But again, I like Priester, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna end up losing sleep over that one. I like Priester a lot. I think a lot of people do, but so that all right. So you bring in Correa, you bring in a little bit of money, you make this prospect swap, and then you jettison some money. You trade Kyle Tucker for Jared Walsh and some other stuff, but Walsh was the main, like the major leaguer coming back to you in that deal. Now, Tucker was going to be, was he going to be 41 or
42? I think.
Yeah, that's, man. As I know Duke is huge on Kyle Tucker. I love Kyle Tucker. I picked him preseason in the Nostradamus thread to win the MVP. Of course, that didn't happen, but I'm a huge Kyle Tucker fan. But $42, especially after bringing in Correa, were you ever planning on trying to keep Tucker?
Like, I was back and forth on Tucker since the trading deadline. If I would have gotten a good offer for Tucker during the season, I would have moved him last year. So I was very much back and forth. And then once I realized that, hey, I could probably win some money in the Constellation, I was like, okay, I'm just going to hang on to him if I'm not getting a really good offer. And to me, like, I hate doing this, but if you just look at the points between Walsh and Tucker last year, it's really not that different.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you look at it from a perspective of, hey, watching baseball and like understanding the game and fantasy and all that stuff, like, Kyle Tucker's a lot better than Jared Walsh. But from a point standpoint, I mean, what Walsh have what,
3.43 a game, and I think Tucker was up near 4. But the
Walsh had
difference in money, Walsh for $9 at 3.5, Tucker at $40 at 3.8, 3.94. It's a big difference there.
I mean, Walsh had 494 points last year. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, a big difference in money, not
Yeah.
overall production. Points are points,
Exactly. I mean, obviously, Roto League. There's no freaking way I ever make that deal.
Sure.
I mean, and I don't even know if I make that deal in a Roto League with contracts. But I mean, Tucker only had like 40 more points last year. I mean, 385 to 343 or whatever it was points per game. Yeah, I get that. But to save the $30 to me, it was a deal worth making.
That you could, put into multiple players. Plus, Walsh is another one of these weird guys I'm just now seeing that has this outfield eligibility as well. So you've got Lau that if you needed him to, could slip into left. You've got Walsh if you needed him to, could slip into right. And Walsh being able to play right field is probably, well, not like what allowed you to, but probably didn't hurt when you went and acquired the first base only Mancini.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, that weird kind of unexpected hidden eligibility that crops up for these guys in a league like this, where you play like the left, center, right fields, that can be more valuable than people realize when it comes to lineup construction and especially being a daily league.
Yeah.
Being able to keep those guys in the lineup. I mean, look at your starting lineup right now, just as it's sitting right now. It's full of guys 3.8 points a game, 3.81, 3.7, 3.5, 3.6. Like, I think any one of those guys would have maybe not been better than Gallo on my team, but any one of those guys would have been damn near the best offensive player on my team that did make the playoffs. That limped into the playoffs with a sub 500 record and an injured roster. But that is almost a full starting lineup of guys averaging around 3.5 points a game. When you factor in the pitching that we kind of already went over, the Astros are not a team to be messed with. You didn't have the great first year, but it wasn't due to poor ownership or, this isn't Royals Mark, who we just removed from the league and said, I'm just not going to try the rest of the year because DeGrom got hurt or whatever it is, man. I told the EC earlier, I said, I'm looking over the stuff for the podcast with Ray later. And man, I think, like I told you, I think this guy's made some under the radar moves that, maybe because, you're on the Discord, you talk on the Discord and stuff, but there's like a half dozen or so of us that are on there. Like, we don't have lives, we're on there all the time. And then there's other guys that really never say anything at all. The Angels don't say much. Dwight, the Mets, they don't say much. So I think when one of those teams makes a lot of these moves, they don't really get picked up as often because the guy's not on there talking about them.
Yeah.
And I think you were in the on the block channels and stuff, and you were saying, this guy's on the block, I'm looking for this, and then the deals got made, and we've only got into a couple of them here, but by the time we get to the end of this list, whoever watches this is going to realize, like, man, the Astros got to work during the offseason, and some of these guys have been sitting on their hands. They haven't made cuts yet. Some of these teams are still well over, when you account for inflation, well over the cap limit. Some of these teams got to work and some didn't, and the Astros are one of these teams that got to work. Another under the radar move right after the Walsh deal, you acquired real life Astro again, Michael Brantley, for I didn't write down who they were. I put specs and a pick.
I have it up.
But either way, I like it. Another points league darling, if he stays healthy. And I think 2.98 points a game for him is probably a little low. I mean, he's starting to get up there a bit, but Brantley's a solid player for the price, especially.
I gave up Brenton Doyle, who is a Rockies prospect, and we know how that goes.
Yeah.
And Justin Lange, who's a young spec pitcher who is another dollar add during the season. And
you
I
got a
trimmed
lot of value out of your fab. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, just from a few names so far, you got a lot of value out of that fab.
And I trimmed a 3rd-round pick also in that deal.
3rd rounder. All right. So yeah, not bad. I mean, you pick up a guy that is kind of a, he's a professional hitter, steady Eddie. He's going to be $12, but if he can bring that 3-point per game, and we've seen that he's capable of being better than that. Yeah, I like that deal. Another solid bat to plug in there. Injuries have always been a thing with him, but that's kind of in the past. He's stayed healthy, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. I mean, the DH. I mean, they cycle him into the DH a little bit because Jordan can now play the outfield a bit, so that helps.
Yeah, not blowing the doors off like getting a Correa or a some of the other guys that you pick up, but just one of those steady. I think he's maybe the only guy outside of Lau that you have that has left field eligibility right now. So definitely going to be leaning on him a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that was
hoping
kind of what I looked at
he
him
stays
for.
Healthy. Yeah,
was to lock in a left fielder.
And then we talked about Greinke, who you acquired for JD Davis, and I have prospect here.
I think it's Sammy Siani.
Sammy Siani. Okay, don't know a lot about him. I've heard the name, but
not much power.
Yeah, not a top 100 guy or anything.
No.
But not that Greinke commands anymore a top 100 guy. But if you end up keeping him, if you end up keeping him, Greinke will be a better 4th or 5th starter than probably the majority of ABL teams have.
Yeah.
It's just about if you want to keep him for that $20.
Exactly.
Yeah. The Quinn Priester deal we talked about for the aforementioned Hunter Bishop and Kiner Falefa. And then you trade Jeremy Pena, who you acquired during the regular season in year 1, for Brandon Lau from the Pirates, who were needing to cut some salary. So it seems like you kind of took advantage of not took advantage of the team, but took advantage of a couple of teams that needed to get rid of some money in Correa and Lau. And in doing so, got yourself one of the best middle infield tandems probably in the league for relatively cheap. I mean, the capital that you ended up giving up was almost, I don't want to say nothing. You didn't get the guys for free, but a really nice middle infield combo for some picks and prospects, really.
Yeah, I mean, I like Pena a lot, but it's one of those situations where I couldn't pass up the deal because, again, I had the cap space sitting there. I'm going to spend it in the auction. I don't want to get into a bidding war. I don't want somebody else to go out and trade for them. So I figured, hey, I still have a few prospects that I have to either trade or cut anyway. So,
yeah, I don't know if a lot of people realize how good Lau was, putting up 3.8 points a game, 39 homers, 99 ribs. He's 27 years old, physical prime. No reason to think that he can't do it again, or maybe that there's not a little more ceiling there. But even if we just saw his best, nearly 4 points a game at second base for $33, you're not going to find too many teams that wouldn't readily take that. Yeah, I think maybe if he just, he's a Ray, he's not a big name. Maybe if he was a little louder, Duke would have had a little more action on him. But as it is, I mean, you're the beneficiary with a Correa Lau middle infield. I mean, that's just.
But I mean, I think the other thing is that the majority of the teams that are the more active teams are the ones that went into the offseason with a lot of money on their tied up already. So the more active, most of the active teams couldn't trade with each other because they were all in the same boat. So that was kind of in the minority there.
Yeah. You end up, let's see, what did you do after that? You acquire Colin McHugh for a draft pick. McHugh's got that. I believe he kept the SPARP eligibility. Yes, he did, which was probably, I have to assume, a factor in wanting to grab him.
100%.
Cheap, yeah.
He's $3. He's gonna pay. I think. I mean, he was injured. He was injured going into last year. So I mean, depends where he ends up if he starts or relieves. I mean, he not too long ago was a pretty good starter. So,
Yeah.
but again, even if he goes back to Tampa or he's in middle relief, I figure for $1 or $3 at this point, why not?
I have a hard time deciding with guys like that. Do I want them to be a starter, or would I rather they have the spark and be like the multi-inning
Yeah,
swingman or whatever, rack up some holds or whatever it might be? Because having those guys in the starter spot, if you're also fielding, a full bullpen or however you want to say it, that can be. There were some teams that took advantage of those sparks and realized a lot of extra points from that a lot of us didn't during the year. I'm trying it with Jeff Hoffman, and I feel like I have another one. Duplantier, the D-backs guy, who I don't know if I'm going to keep him around for $3, but I'm going to take a shot at it, and I don't know if I don't think Jeff Hoffman will be a starter. He's pretty
I
much a
don't think
failed
so.
starter at this point. The Rockies ruined any real potential he might have had as a starter. But yeah, I mean, for a draft pick, I like that deal. Nice little back end to either the staff or good piece of the bullpen for your team. You then acquire another pretty major piece in Yasmani Grandal, 3.8 point per game catcher, who will be only $17. Compare that to Will Smith, who after inflation would be $29. Realmuto is not going to inflate. He's already a free agent, but a nearly 4 point per game catcher for $17. You gave McCutchen and Miguel. And was there anybody else there?
Is Kutch? I think is Kutch, McGill, and a pick.
And a pick. So McGill had showed some flashes of potentially being a major league pitcher, but I mean, I'm with you here. I would have easily traded him and Kutch and the pick for this Grandal deal. I think a lot of us saw that having a catcher in this league that actually plays and puts up points is huge, because a lot of us had just a big gaping black hole.
Yep, that was me last. That was me last year.
Yeah, yeah. I had Martin Maldonado, who, as an Astros fan, you know how much of a scrub he is.
Yep.
And Zach Collins, who the two of them combined cost me $2, but didn't give me anything. I hardly knew which one was going to play on which day. Sometimes they both weren't playing. Sometimes they both were, and you don't know which. It's like choosing between a turd and a bigger turd. It just so. And I, full disclosure, I had gotten with my dad, the Padres, a couple times about Will Smith, just because I thought having a good catcher might be that much of an advantage. But at $29, I just couldn't do it. And then you look at 3.8 points a game for Grandal at 17. It's just it's like the Joe Musgrove of catcher value. It's just I really feel like that's a tremendous pickup. And maybe Miguel ends up being something really nice. Maybe
it's
he
possible,
does.
But I mean, the end of last year, I mean, he was exhausted because he had never thrown that many innings before. So I mean, there was a clear deficiency in him the end of last year.
Yeah.
You could tell that he had kind of reached that wall. And I mean, it honestly depends on what the Mets do this winter of whether he has a spot in the rotation, because you have DeGrom, Syndergaard, Carrasco, probably against David Peterson, and then depending what they do with Stroman or somebody else, I don't know if there's room for him. So that was kind of part of it as well. That unless I can send him to the minors, I don't know if I'm necessarily gonna have room on my roster for him if he's not in the rotation.
Sure. Did you draft him, or was he another fab pickup?
I traded for him when I was doing my selling.
You traded for me. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, what I think, who did Grandal come from? I don't recall who you got him from. Was it a team that
Dodgers
needed to Dodgers? Okay, so Joe didn't. Well, maybe he did. I don't recall exactly the Dodgers financially. I think he probably did have to trim some money.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's rolling the dice on a young pitcher. Joe has obviously had success with young, cheap pitchers already in year one. So, I'm not gonna say Joe doesn't know what he's doing. But I like the deal for the team getting Grandal. I really, when you stick him in with the rest of your lineup and then look at this next deal you made to really round it out and solidify it. Really the big one. I mean, you've made some big ones, but this was a big one. You acquire Trey Mancini, German Marquez, and maybe something. I just wrote down the main pieces, and you traded Meansy, Connor Joe, Miguel Rojas, and then you can fill in the rest if there is any more. But take us through this deal. Was this being low on Means and like kind of wanting to strike while he still had the value that he had?
Yeah.
Or is this being big on Marquez?
All right, so Means I had gotten, I think, towards the end of the season as somebody who, recognizing that I think he was at like 17 with inflation, so starting pitch and knowing how starting pitching is going to go in this league, I was like, okay, $17. He helped me in the constellation to get to the finals there. $17. I don't think I can. I mean, I don't think I gave up a ton. It was a fair trade for Means. I don't think I gave up a ton, but I figured I might as well get him and then figure out what the hell I'm going to do in the offseason. I liked Means, but he's one of those guys that came out of nowhere 2019, I think it was. He doesn't strike a ton out. Pitching in the AL East is always scary. He's solid, but he's not. I think he's always going to kind of be like a mid of the pack guy. So I figured, hey, if I can trade him for Marquez, who has a lot more potential strikeout, so I think he's just overall better pitcher. Pick up Mancini for, I think, 21 with inflation when I paid like 30 something for Rizzo last year in the auction. So to me, Mancini's a bargain. Connor Joe I had gotten as part when I sold something off during the season. I forget what the hell I sold off. He was part of a deal. I got him. And obviously I really don't have any space for him. And I'm not going to, and probably wasn't going to give him a contract. But I think after what he did last year, there's some potential.
Sure.
Johan Rojas, I like a lot. I think he's going to be a big prospect. Waldichuk, again, Phillies were trying to get him for a while. I like Waldichuk, but he was also one of those guys that popped up this year, and he was another one of my dollar fabs.
Nice. I would love to go through and it'd be a lot to dissect for 30 teams, but man, you achieved some really nice value out of your fab, at least in year one so far, just from what you've been able to parlay it into. That's pretty solid fab value.
Yeah, thanks. I'm definitely digging that. I do have a few guys left, I think, that I got the same route, but I think I did trade a good amount of them.
I love it, man. I haven't went through every single deal that everybody has made in the offseason for like coming up to year two already. But when I started dissecting yours today, I found myself surprised. And like I said, I'm on the Discord all the time. I work from home. I don't have a whole lot going on. I look at this stuff all the time, and I was still taken aback at how active you had been in the brief offseason that we had before it froze up. The AL West, I mean, Seth was very good in year one. Obviously made a somewhat deep run in the playoffs. Sam is gearing up to have a lot of money to spend in the auction. Oakland, I don't really know what Oakland is doing. And the Angels were a playoff team too. It's a super tough division, but
100%.
You have been, I think, by far the most active in the offseason of that division so far. Sam's made a lot of deals, but I don't think he made a lot of deals for like steady major league talent just yet. I think he's planning on having a lot of money to spend. Man, the Astros, you stocked up already, and this is before the auction. This is before the first year player draft. You still got some capital if you wanted to make another trade. People in this league love their first round picks. You know, if that's a direction you wanted to go, but man, I'm impressed with the moves made already. This is a team that if you just looked at the record, if you looked at the 20-36 in year one, and you know, maybe you thought that the Rays, the Astros, they're not around on Discord a ton. You know, maybe this guy is kind of checked out. Man, this guy has not checked out. I kind of feel with you almost the same way I feel about Cleveland Mark. It was like, yeah, the Guardians, the Indians, they got hammered with injuries and stuff. He had a terrible record, but Mark did not sit back and do nothing. You know, some of these guys, they might not be on there chatting and shooting the shit all the time. These guys are working and they are making moves, and these guys are tough parts of the league. And I do not envy the AL West, man. I really don't.
It's tough.
These are moves. You know, you said you're an impatient guy. You're a flags fly forever. You're a win now guy.
Yeah.
You had to make some moves to compete in that division, and man, you made some moves. A lot of big names. Now, you know, like we said earlier, you're going to be up at give or take $245 if if the draft started tomorrow or whatever. You've got a little bit to spend. You also have capital if you want to make moves, and you know, not so much worry about the auction. Do you? I don't want you to give away too much of what you're thinking. Do you have a guy that you see out there right now that's going to be in the auction? Do you have like a target? You don't have to say who it is, but do you have a guy that you're like, this is the guy I'm going to try to get?
To be honest, I haven't even looked yet, to tell you the truth. I couldn't. That's not even pushing you off. I haven't even looked yet. I mean, the way I look at it is, I mean, a few of those relievers are probably going to go.
Sure.
Greinke, whatever. Hopefully, I could find a home for him via trade. But other than that, I mean, obviously, I need a third base. I probably need a little more center field insurance and arms like everybody else. I mean, ultimately, based on the position I am going in, I'm going to probably try to spread the money out as best as I can and look to kind of hedge my bet with a few solid guys after the dust settles. And hopefully go for it bats and go for innings and kind of go for there.
So I don't remember I had never used couch managers. I had never done a 30-teamer. So like the initial auction, I kind of don't remember a ton. Were you were you bidding early, or were you more of a sit back and wait kind of guy during the initial auction?
I was kind of more in the middle, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, I mean, Rizzo, LeMahieu, and Max Fried, along with Tucker, were my big purchases. Fried got hurt. Rizzo and LeMahieu were kind of eh. So, I mean, ultimately, I guess that is part of my downfall, too. And then the other thing is the way I kind of looked at it, both with my moves and overall is, yeah, I know pitching. There's no pitching. It's scarce, whatever. But everyone's in the same boat as me. The way I look at it is points are points are points. If everyone's so concerned about the pitching, which I get, why don't I just look to get the best bang for the buck with the points, try not to have any holes. And I mean, at the end of the day, a $33 Correa or a $33 Low is going to put up the same amount of points overall as a starting pitcher that's going to probably go for $60 or $70.
And carries a much, maybe not so much so than Correa, but carries a much higher injury risk.
I mean, I get that you're going to I get that it's an average. I get that you're going to get, like, if you get a DeGrom, if he's healthy, somebody like that in a 2-start week, that's obviously going to make a difference. But I think the fact that you're limited to 7 starts, nobody has starting pitchers coming out of their ears, and the other thing is such an active league as far as trading too, that I know I'll be able to do something if I have to during the season. So I figure, hey, why don't I just get just get what I can get, and just get guys that I like at prices I like, and kind of go from there.
Hey, you said everybody's in the same boat as you. I think a lot of us wish we were in the same boat as a $17 Musgrove or a $4 Tony Disco or a dollar Mats. I think a lot of guys wish they were in the same boat as you. I get what you mean though with the scarcity of pitching, but man, that rotation is not going to be one that you want to go up against in the regular season, for sure. I feel like it was pretty well definitively proven that stars and scrubs is not going to work
No.
in a league like this. And the guys that seem like they were maybe trying that, a lot of them are no longer here. Royals Mark, gone. Giants Roger had went stars and scrubs. He's gone. The Orioles guy and the Brewers guy, they were a couple of those guys were some of the big time prospect spenders that I don't think really realized, maybe didn't read the Constitution all the way, didn't realize what that meant or what it was going to mean going forward. Maybe they thought that they couldn't have thought that money wouldn't have counted against their like auction cap or whatever.
Yeah.
Like maybe they misunderstood that. Well, like, yeah, he's not going to count until he gets called up, but you still have to spend that money in the auction.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, like you said, the idea is to fill the holes and just get points. And at the end of the week, the only person breaking this shit down is you if you look at it, me when I do the podcast, but really all that matters, you get the W or the L, and they don't care where the points came from. So
yeah, that's kind of. I mean, again, I'm not looking to tank anything. I don't want to have a hole anywhere. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do with the rest of the offseason and the rest of the auction, to say, all right, what can I do? I mean, and ultimately, at the end of the day, all the trades that I made, I mean, Hunter Bishop, if he lives up to what he was supposed to do 2 years ago, that could bite me. But I mean, Pena is really the only one that I have a feeling I might end up regretting. I mean, Rojas potentially, maybe if one of the pitchers hits at some point. But I mean, pitchers are so friggin' hard to tell anyway.
Yeah. Plus, you've got one of your own. You've got a stud prospect pitcher of your own. So he could be the one that hits, and you're real happy.
Exactly, and then I have the draft. I have trades. So
yeah, you've got picks too. It's not like you forfeited having any picks, especially in the upcoming FYPD. You still have your first. You still have one in every round. So it's not like you ransacked the farm to win now. I mean, you're going to be able to replenish most of what you gave away, like prospect capital wise. If not, a 1-to-1 replenishment, at least bodies wise, like dart throw wise, you're going to be able to refill that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like I said, I still have a few prospects. I still have too many too.
Yeah. Good problem to have, I guess, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys are obviously better than others, but
yeah, you're sitting at 18 to 20 now, and then still 5 picks coming. So yeah, you've got even a little more shedding to do. So yeah, I if you're watching, if you do watch, I don't think Ray is closed for business. If I'm taking these hints, and that's pretty much all I got. You got anything you wanted to hit on before we wrap up?
No, that's pretty much it as far as from team point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I really wanted to dive into like all of the stuff from year one, we could sit and talk for quite a bit longer. But I think an hour of your time is about the best I can ask for on a weeknight, and we can get you on. This is no frills here. This is anytime somebody's on here, it's just 2 guys sitting in their house talking about a fantasy league that only they're interested in. So. Yeah, man, it was good to have you on. Kind of good to meet you face to face as it is, and yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, man, of course.
All right, man. This is Astros Ray. This is Armchair Updates. Thanks everybody that watches, and thanks again, Ray.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Take it easy.
Bye.